The sun was super hot, baking the dusty main street of Dry Creek. This town was too tiny to brag and too grumpy to be nice. Flies buzzed around in the heat. Wagon wheels squeaked far away. Right in the middle of the town square, two kids stood, barefoot in the dirt. There was a boy, about 12, and a little girl, maybe 6, holding his hand tight like she was his shadow. Their clothes were old and worn out. The boy had a shirt way too big, with sleeves rolled up and falling apart. The girl's dress used to be white, but now looked like dirty sand. Her dark curls stuck to her face, and her lips were dry from the sun. She held a tiny piece of cloth, once a doll's dress, like it reminded her of better days. The boy, Eli. Turner stared at the crowd around them. His face was dirty but strong, his jaw tight. In his other hand, he held a piece of bread someone tossed at him, not to be kind, but to be mean. "Get lost, you rats," a shopkeeper yelled. "Heard. Their parents died from fever," someone else said from the back. "Good riddance." A rock flew and hit Eli in the side. He groaned but didn't cry. His sister Sadie whimpered and hugged him closer. "Eli, I'm scared," she said. "I got you," he whispered. "Don't let go." They were all alone. Now, their parents died 2 weeks ago on the trip west, taken by sickness and buried under cedar trees by the road. The wagon train left them behind. Nobody wanted orphans. Eli promised Sadie he'd look after her. That's what Pa said before he died. Asterisk, you're the man now. Keep her safe. Asterisk. But how do you do that when even water costs more than your name? More breadcrumbs got thrown at them. People laughed. Then, the crowd went quiet. Heavy boot steps came, slow like thunder over dry ground. A tall man walked up from the edge of the square, his shadow cutting through the dusty air. He wore a big hat that hid his eyes and a worn-out coat that touched his boots. A gun sat on his hip, and a rope hung over his shoulder. This was Jed Culleton, who folks called the Ghost of Silver Run. He used to herd cattle, fight bad guys, and ride with the Texas Rangers when they were tough. But after losing his wife and son, he kept to himself, living on a ranch outside Dry Creek. He didn't talk much, but when he did, people listened. Now, he was walking straight toward the kids. "What are you all doing?" he growled, stopping in front of Eli and Sadie. Nobody answered. Jed looked at the boy, then at the crowd. "You proud of this?" he snapped, throwing crumbs at kids like they're dogs. "Laughing while they're hungry?" The shopkeeper mumbled. "We didn't mean nothing, Jed. They've been begging all week." Jed stepped closer. "So that means you throw rocks?" Nobody looked at him. Jed turned to the kids. "Where's your family?" "Dead," Eli said plainly. "Got any relatives?" "No, sir." Jed looked at Sadie. Her eyes were big and tired. Her lips shook, but she stood strong, brave, even now. He knelt down. "You hungry?" Sadie nodded. Eli didn't. "I ain't begging," Eli said. "We can work. We'll pay for what we eat." Jed didn't smile, but his face softened a bit. "Ever clean out horse stalls?" Eli blinked. "Yes, sir." "Chop wood?" "Yes, sir." Jed stood up. "Then you're coming with me, both of you." People in the crowd gasped. "You can't just—" someone started. Jed turned slowly. "You want to tell me what I can't do?" The guy shut up fast. Jed looked at the kids. "Well, you coming?" Ellie looked at Sadie. She looked at him. He nodded once. Jed held out his hand, and Sadie took it. Eli followed, still holding the bread crust. They walked out of the square, leaving the quiet behind. Yet's ranch was a few miles west of Dry Creek, in a cozy spot between hills. The house was small but sturdy, with 2 rooms, a porch, and a barn nearby. Chickens clucked out back, and a black horse stood tied under a shed. Sadie stared at everything, her eyes huge, still holding Yet's hand. Eli walked beside them, quiet. Jed pointed to the porch. "Go sit for a bit. I'll get you water and bread that hasn't been on the ground." They sat down. Inside, Jed grabbed a fresh loaf of bread from the pantry and poured water from a barrel into 2 tin cups. He brought them out with a blanket for Sadie and a leather jacket for Eli. "Don't call it charity," he said gruffly. "Call it an investment." Eli nodded carefully. "Yes, sir." "Name's Jed, not sir." "Yes, Jed." They ate slowly. Eli broke each piece in half and gave Sadie the bigger one. Jed noticed. When they finished, Jed showed them inside. "You'll sleep in there," he said, pointing to a small room. "One bed, but it's clean. Water pumps out back. Outhouse is 50 steps west." Sadie climbed onto the bed like it was super soft. Eli stood in the doorway. "Why'd you help us?" Jed paused. "'Cause I know what it's like to lose the people you love." Eli didn't say anything. "But you'll work," Jed added. "No free rides." "We will," Eli said. Jed turned. "Sun's going down. Tomorrow, you start with the chickens. She can collect eggs. You clean their co-op." Eli nodded. "Deal. And call me Jed. Not boss, not cowboy, just Jed." "Okay." That night, when everything was quiet, Sadie slept curled up under the quilt. Eli sat by the window, looking at the stars. From the main room, he heard a chair scrape and a floorboard creak. Jed was awake, too. Something felt different. Eli didn't know what, but for the first time in weeks, he wasn't scared to sleep. The rooster crowed super early, before the sun was up, loud like a warning. Eli was already awake. He hadn't slept much, not because he was scared, but because he was thinking about the man who stood up for him and his sister, about the warm food in his stomach, about the bed that didn't creak. He tucked the blanket over Sadie, who was still sleeping, her chest moving softly, lips open, one arm around her tattered doll dress. Her cheeks finally had some color. Eli tiptoed into the main room. Jed was up, standing by the stove with a coffee pot in his hand and a pipe in his mouth. He glanced over and nodded toward the door. "Pumps out back. Water will wake you up better than coffee." Eli nodded and went outside. The air was cold and fresh. Morning mist hung on the grass, and his boots squished in the wet dirt. He worked the pump until it squeaked and cold water poured out. He cupped his hands, splashed his face, and gasped. It was cold, but felt good, like he was really here, alive. He filled a tin bucket and brought it inside. Jed poured 2 mugs of strong black coffee and pushed one toward Eli. "I ain't never drank coffee," Eli said. Jed grunted. There's a first time for everything. The first sip made Eli's face scrunch, but he kept drinking. He wouldn't look weak in front of this man. After breakfast, old biscuits and jerky, Jed stood and stretched. Time to meet the chickens. Eli followed him to the side yard, where the chicken coop sat under a shed. A dozen hens clucked and ran as they got close. "Co-op needs cleaning. Feed's low. Eggs need picking," Jed said. "Think you can handle it?" Eli nodded. "Yes, Jed." Jed gave a small nod. "Sadie can pick eggs when she wakes up. Chickens like gentle kids like her." Eli climbed into the coop and started scraping straw, dirt, and poop into a wheelbarrow Jed brought. It was messy, but he didn't complain. Not once. Inside, Sadie woke up to the chickens clucking. She walked barefoot into the main room, rubbing her eyes. Jed was at the table, carving a piece of wood. He looked up and nodded. "Morning." Sadie didn't talk, but gave a little wave. "Like chickens?" She nodded. "Eli's outside. Go tell him you're here to help." She paused. Jed grabbed a piece of bread from the bread box and handed it to her. "Eat this first." Sadie nibbled it quietly, then put on the big jacket Jed left out, opened the door, and walked to the coop. Eli looked up, surprised. "Sleep good?" Sadie nodded. "Good," he said. "Help me find the eggs." They crouched and searched the nests, talking to the hens like they were buddies. Sadie smiled for the first time in days. By noon, the sun was up, and the chores were done. Jed was fixing a loose board on the fence. Eli walked over, wiping his hands on his pants. "All done." Jed looked at him. "Hens fed?" "Yes, Jed." Jed nodded. "Saddle's loose on the horse. Can you tighten it?" Eli's eyes lit up. "Yes." He ran to the shed and approached the horse slowly. She snorted, but stayed still. Eli put his hand on her neck, whispered softly, and started fixing the saddle straps. Jed watched from the fence, chewing his pipe. That evening, after dinner, the kids sat on the porch. Sadie was braiding a piece of string carefully. Eli looked at the sky, still glowing softly. Jed came out with a harmonica and played a slow, sad tune. It wasn't fancy, but it was real. Sadie leaned her head on Eli's shoulder. "Is this home now?" she whispered. Eli didn't answer right away. Then he said, "Maybe it can be." Jed kept playing. A week went by. Each day felt a bit cozier, with a bit more laughter. Eli worked hard on the ranch, quiet but determined. Sadie started humming again. Jed felt his house get a little warmer. One evening, Eli helped deliver a baby cow. The next day, he scared off a fox near the hen house. "Boys got guts," Jed muttered to himself. At night, Jed sometimes talked to them like they'd always been there, like it was normal to have a boy fixing saddles and a girl folding laundry at the table. He never said it, but he started leaving the hall lamp on, just in case. Trouble came quietly, like it always does. One afternoon, as Eli carried water from the well, a rider came from Dry Creek, a fat man in a green coat with squinty eyes. Jed stepped onto the porch. "Sheriff Brighton," he said. "Colleton." The sheriff got off his horse and nodded at Eli. "Boy." Eli tensed. Brighton fixed his belt. "I heard you took in some runaway orphans." "I did." "You gonna file with the judge?" Jed asked. "Why?" "Some folks in town say maybe you stole them." "Maybe it ain't right." Jed stepped off the porch. "You accusing me?" "No, sir. Just saying folks don't like what they don't get." Yet's jaw tightened. Brighton shrugged. "Just warning you, if you want to keep them, make it legal." He got back on his horse and left. Eli stood still, holding the bucket. Jed turned to him. "You ain't going nowhere unless you want to." Eli looked up. "I don't." Jed nodded. "Then we'll fix it." That night, Eli couldn't sleep. Sadie was asleep beside him, clutching her doll dress. Eli stared at the ceiling, at the shadows. "Jed," he whispered into the dark. From the next room, Jed answered. "Yeah? Thanks for not sending us away." A pause. "Wasn't ever gonna." Eli closed his eyes. The house felt full, like maybe this was what home should be. The next morning, just as the sun peeked over the hills, Jed saddled his horse and said he was going to Dry Creek. They needed supplies, and he had to talk to the judge. Eli watched him tighten the straps. "Can I come?" he asked, hopeful but nervous. Jed paused, then shook his head. "Not today. I got business to handle. You stay here. Watch Sadie. Can you do that?" Eli stood taller. "Yes, Jed." Jed looked at him for a long moment, nodded, and rode off. The horse's hooves thumped softly as he disappeared between the hills. Eli stood on the porch until the dust settled, then turned to the ranch, feeling a new responsibility. Sadie was at the table, braiding another string into a loop. "Jed gone?" she asked. "Yeah, just us today. Hungry?" She nodded. They made oatmeal together on the stove. Eli stirred carefully, like Jed showed him, so it wouldn't spill. Sadie sat on a crate, swinging her legs and humming. After breakfast, Eli gave Sadie a job: sort the kindling by the fireplace. It wasn't much, but she felt important. Then he went to check the chicken coop, the garden, and the animals' water. Everything was fine until mid-morning when Sadie yelled, "Eli!" He dropped the feed sack and ran to the house. A tall, skinny, sunburnt man with mean eyes and a crooked smile stood at the gate. He held the gate with one hand, the other near a knife on his belt. "Howdy," the man said slowly. Eli stepped in front of Sadie. "What do you want?" The man smirked. "Heard a guy out here's keeping orphans. Came to see." "You need to leave." "Is that so?" The man grinned. "I don't take orders from kids. Maybe I'll talk to your uncle. He's not here." The man's eyes got darker. "Then I'll wait." Eli reached behind him, feeling for the pitchfork Jed left on the porch. His fingers found it. He grabbed it and held it out. "Come closer, and I swear." "Eli," Sadie whispered, grabbing his shirt. The man laughed. "Feisty kid. I like that." "Don't worry, boy. I won't hurt you if you stay in your place." He tipped his hat and walked off. Eli stood frozen until the man was gone, then hugged Sadie. "I won't let anything happen to you," he said softly. Jed came back just after sunset with flour, cloth, and a serious face. "You both okay?" he asked, getting off the horse. Eli nodded. "A man came tall, red hair, skinny. Said he heard about us. Yet's eyes got hard. He do anything? No, just stood at the gate. Said he'd wait for you. Jed clenched his jaw and looked toward the trees. Brighton said some folks are causing trouble. That guy might be one of them. What did the judge say? Jed looked down. Said I need to prove I own this land and can take care of you right. But you do. Not to them. Not yet. They'll ask questions. Might send someone here. Eli's heart sank. What if they say no? Jed didn't answer right away. Then he said, they'll try to send you to workhouses, separate ones for you and Sadie, but we won't let that happen. Eli nodded firmly. We'll do whatever it takes. The next week was busy. Jed gave them more chores, teaching Eli to fix fences, spot sick animals, and cook stew without burning it. He made Sadie read every night by lamplight. Gotta show them we're a real family, he said, even if it's not by blood. And it started to feel like one. One night, a big storm hit. Lightning flashed over the hills, and the wind howled. Sadie ran to Yet's room, crying. He picked her up, sat in a rocking chair, and hummed a lullaby. Eli watched from the doorway, feeling something warm in his chest, like safety, something he hadn't felt since Pa died. A few days later, a fancy black carriage rolled up. 2 men got out, one with a clipboard, one in a city suit. Mr. Colaton, Jed said, stepping out. That's me. We're here from the family registry to check if you're fit to keep Eli and Sadie Turner. Jed nodded. They're inside. Talk to me first. The men spent almost an hour looking at every room, the pantry, the animals. They even tested Eli and Sadie's reading. When they left, they didn't say much. That night, Jed sat quietly at the table. They might say no, he said. Eli looked up. But you're the only real thing we've got. Jed stared into his coffee. Then we'll fight together. Outside, the wind moved the grass, and inside, 3 hearts beat together, waiting for the world to see what they already knew. They were a family. 3 days went by with no news. Every morning, Eli watched the road to Dry Creek, squinting under a hat Jed gave him. Sadie didn't talk much, but Eli saw her worrying how she held her now-clean doll dress, mended but still just a scrap. Jed kept busy, fixing the shed roof, cleaning his old rifle, chopping wood harder than he needed to. But every night, after dinner, when the lamp was low, they all sat quieter than usual. On the 4th morning, Eli saw dust on the horizon. Someone's coming, he called, his voice nervous. Jed stepped out, wiping his hands. Inside, both of you. Eli started to argue, but Yet's look stopped him. The black carriage was back with the same 2 men. They got out quietly. The man in the suit walked to the porch and tipped his hat. Mr. Colaton, he said. Jed crossed his arms. Well, the man looked at his papers. You own the land. The kids are healthy, reading well. House is stable. But there's a problem. Jed didn't blink. What kind? The man cleared his throat. Rumors about your past, that you're not stable, that living out here alone isn't good for kids. Jed stepped forward. You mean because I buried my wife and son, built a life again, and took in kids your town that starve while throwing rocks? The man looked uneasy. I'm just saying what's been said. I don't care what's been said, Jed growled. I know those kids better than anyone. They're safe here. They're growing. They're loved. That's enough. The second man stepped up. That's why we're here to see how they act. Can we talk to them? Jed turned and called. Eli, Sadie, come out. They stepped onto the porch, Eli holding Sadie's hand. Both were clean, clothes neat. The suited man knelt down. You know why we're here? Eli nodded. We need to know how you feel about living here. Is Mr. Colaton good to you? Sadie looked at Eli, then at the man. He reads to us at night, she whispered, and lets me help in the garden. Eli stepped forward. He saved us when nobody else would. He didn't have to, but he did. The man nodded slowly. And if the court said you had to go somewhere else? Sadie's face fell. No. Eli squeezed her hand. We wouldn't go. Jed watched, a lump in his chest. The men stood. We'll report what we found. They left without another word. 2 more days passed, heavy and uncertain. Eli tried to act normal, cleaning the coop, fixing a barn latch, teaching Sadie to skip stones at the creek. But at night, he couldn't sleep. Jed saw him one evening on the porch, arms crossed. "Miss your folks?" Jed asked. Eli nodded. "Every day." Jed sat beside him. "Me too." They sat quietly. Then Eli said, "I don't want to lose this." "You heard this place." Jed looked at him. "You won't. I'll fight hard to keep you both." The letter came the next morning. Jed opened it slowly, read it twice, then looked at Eli and Sadie on the porch. "They said yes," he said. Sadie squealed. Eli's knees wobbled. "You're mine now, legally, if you want me." Eli stepped forward. "We already did." Jed knelt, arms open. They ran to him. That afternoon, they had a big meal: salt pork, beans, cornbread, and a pie from a neighbor lady who felt bad for staying quiet. The three sat at the table, not as strangers, but as a family. In the months after, the ranch did great. Eli grew tall and strong, working with Jed, learning to read storms, rope cows, and make hard choices. Sadie's laughter filled the air. She raised baby chicks, learned to bake biscuits, and drew flowers in old books. One evening, watching the sunset, Eli asked, "You think Ma and Pa can see us?" Jed looked at the sky. "If there's any fairness in this world, I bet they can, and I bet they're real proud." Eli nodded. "Me too." They sat in the golden light, the wind gentle across the plains, feeling whole again for the first time since everything fell apart. Because sometimes, family isn't who you're born to. It's who shows up when nobody else does.